schools have been part of our community since the first pioneers arrived in Hermantown. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, 6 two-room schools were built. The first was the Zimmerman School, built in 1875 on land donated by Jacob Zimmerman. The Washington School was built in 1892. The Garfield School in 1898, Lincoln in 1900, the Jackson in 1904, and the McKinley, built sometime between 1875 and 1892.
And my first school that I went to in Hermantown was a little one-room school, Garfield School, on the corner of Maple Grove Road and Stebner Road.
There was one school in Jackson, and there was one in Adolph. There was one in the corner of the Hermantown and Uxted Road, or Levake Road, and there was one, let's see, on Midway Road.
Children began school at 7 years of age because in these early years there weren't any school buses, so children needed to be old enough to walk to school.
That I know the kids today hate to hear this, but we walked everywhere. And it was 1.5 miles to the school from where I lived, and I walked that all the time.
It was set up in such a way that it was pretty good for the size of Hermantown that nobody had to walk over 2.5 miles to school. But most of them walked them 2 miles was about the most.
When the schools first began, the teachers played a complex role. There were many responsibilities, and it was, in a way, a different lifestyle.
I guess our teachers at that time were trained to handle a much different situation. Like each teacher there had 4 grades, taught all the different classes, reading, history, math, arithmetic, we called it, geography and all. And they lived in the building.
In the two-room schools, the teachers had a little apartment upstairs. It was called a teacherage.
Sure.
And they lived there. And they did many things besides teach school. I'm thinking of a couple of teachers I know that heard of a family that had lost the mother. And those 2 teachers went to the home and taught the oldest girl, who was 12 years old, how to cook, clean, sew, so she could take care of the home.
Round the clock, they lived upstairs in a teacherage, and they did their paperwork and their tests and correcting papers and all that in the evenings. And I can remember at McKinley, the first 2 teachers I had there, they came in September, and neither one of them left that building or went home until Thanksgiving.
The schools played a different role in the lives of the children. It got them away from the farm. Former student Ruby LaRock says,
"We went to school, we took our time, but everything had to be done just right."
Teachers didn't have much trouble in telling them what to do. She'd assign them certain work to do or certain things to read, and they did it. And of course, in them days, all the stationery and everything that was in the schools was furnished by the school district.
at that time, the two-room schools only went up to the 8th grade, so in 1924, the older grades went to Proctor.
Yes, because there were a few of our kids that had to finish up their education at Proctor.
Okay.
There was nothing for them at that time.
No, that was in the late 20s anyway. A fellow by the name of Henry Uxted, he got a job, he got the contract from the school board, the Hermantown School Board, to furnish a bus to haul the Hermantown 8th grade graduates to Proctor to high school. So he built this bus out of on an old Model T chassis. Well, it wasn't old, it was a new Model T chassis.
Extracurricular activities seem to have played a role in schools since they began.
We had a football team, we had a basketball team, and the kids that wanted to try out went out, and those that made it, and if you didn't make it, it was tough luck, and down the road you went.
We used to play baseball. Baseball was our biggest was our biggest event in Illinois when I went to school.
In the year of 1938, all small schools closed, and in September of that year, a new 10-room school was built, the Hermantown School.
And then the following fall, we started the brand new school at Hermantown. Most of our teachers that we had in these 1- and 2-room schools came right along with us. So we had many of the same teachers were at Hermantown then when we moved in there.
The first class of 19 students graduated from Hermantown High School in 1942.
And you find that most all the young people that went to school, they went there with the idea that they wanted to learn.
And I think at that time, being that the teachers, the parents, the community was so involved and knew all of us and knew what we were doing and all the rest, that they prepared us very well to what the realities were when we walked out the door and we were going to go to work.